Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Extremely pleased to be in the beautiful state of New Hampshire. And I apologize that I am not the speaker who's going to change the tone of the events today and bring you a bunch of joyful news. But what I do believe I will bring you is some light and hope that there is actually a solution, at least to what I'm going to speak about today, and that is the global jihad. I want to just first start with this, and I guess I should say thank you for having me. But I want to start with this. Why are we where we are today? I mean, in 1979, Iran called for the destruction of the United States. Its constitution calls for that and says its entire purpose is to wage jihad until Islam rules the world. That's in their constitution. And in 1979, they took hostages, American hostages, and made it very clear who they were. And then through the 80s, we saw both Iran and other elements of the jihadi movement do things like blow up our embassy or kill Marines in Marine barracks. And in the 90s, we see these things start escalating as the movement moves deeper into Europe and into the United States and Canada and elsewhere. And then on 2011, it happens. And from 2000 to today, what our leadership in both sides of the political party tell us is that this has nothing to do with Islam. So let's start with what the purpose of Islam is. And Frank just alluded to it, and this is a great teaser for what I'm going to talk about. The entire purpose of Islam, according to all Islamic doctrine, is to ensure that there is an Islamic state throughout the entire world called a caliphate, and under that, Sharia or Islamic law is the law of the land. That's it. Islam is no more complicated than that. Islam breaks the entire world into two parts. The Dar al-Islam, where Sharia is the law of the land, and the Dar al-Harb, the house or abode of war, where there is not Sharia as the law of the land. The function of Islam is to eliminate the Dar al-Harb until the entire world is a Dar al-Islam. And the vehicle to do that is called what? Jihad, which in 100% of all published Islamic law is only defined as warfare against non-Muslims. So let's just put that on the line. And so we're here talking national security issues. We have people here that are running for the office of President of the United States, and we have to begin there. And what I would put forth is that since, and actually prior to, but since 9/11, our entire national security apparatus has been unprofessional in its approach to this war, from the four-star generals to the office of the president, to the national security staff, to the leaders of DHS when it was created, the FBI, the CIA, and other agencies. Because we have said this has nothing to do with Islam, despite the fact that our warfighting doctrine says when you analyze an enemy, you start with who he says he is and why he's fighting. And 100% of this enemy that we're facing, from the jihadi in Chattanooga to the 9/11 hijackers and everybody before and in between, have all said we're Muslims waging jihad in the cause of Allah in order to impose Islamic law and establish caliphate, period. So that's what it is. And if we look in Islamic law, authoritative Islamic law, the kind you get at mosque bookstores, not at Barnes & Noble, you will see that 100% of them say that jihad is warfare against non-Muslims. And it's total warfare. It's not just guns and bombs. It's psychological warfare. It is political warfare. It's subversion. It is the whole 9 yards. It's total warfare, something that our DOD has not been practicing. I would say you'd have to go back towards Reagan administration and maybe even beyond that. Complete and total war against non-Muslims. Now, this does not mean that everybody who subscribes or self-identifies as a Muslim wants to live under Sharia or wants to live that. I had people that worked for me when I was at the FBI that were Muslim. And whether they had girlfriends or smoked or drank was not my business. They worked for us for a variety of reasons. And they, at least two of the people that worked with me, did very dangerous things in other parts of the world and had tremendous results. So I'm not here to point out one person and say, because you're a Muslim, you're a threat. What I am saying is if you adhere to Sharia and seek to impose it on me and my family, you're a threat. And our government has a responsibility to protect and defend not only the Constitution, but the people of the United States from such a threat. And this is an easily definable threat because 100% of all Islamic doctrine teaches this. As a matter of fact, I questioned what I would bring with me today to read from because I have all kinds of Islamic textbooks and Islamic books of law. But I thought I'd bring this book, which is the most popular junior high school textbook in American Islamic schools, to give you a little taste of what it says. The word jihad is most often associated with the act of physically confronting evil and wrongdoing. If anyone dies in a jihad, they automatically go to paradise. A shaheed or martyr is described this way by Allah. Don't think those who were killed in Allah's cause are dead. No, they are alive, finding their bounty in the presence of the Lord. And the controlling verses for jihad are, in fact, 9:5, fight and slay the unbeliever wherever you find them, and lie in wait for them in every stratagem of war. And 9:29. So when you understand that this is what it is, we have to begin there and we have to be honest about it. And if you are feeling uncomfortable about this discussion right now, then I would encourage you to engage and ask the tough questions. Because the problem is, it's now 2015, and we lost in Afghanistan, and we lost in Iraq. And we didn't lose because our military failed us. Our military crushed the enemy on the battlefield. We lost because the people we turned to as advisors, the Muslims, we can, all of them, identify as members of this movement. Muslim Brothers, Hamas, and in some cases, Al-Qaeda. I mean, the guy who was the advisor to President Clinton, the guy who met with President Clinton and Vice President Gore more than any other Muslim in America, Abdurrahman al-Amoudi, turned out to be a Hamas Muslim Brotherhood operator who was a financier for Al-Qaeda. So if there's a misunderstanding of how penetrated we are and how successful their movement is, I think the evidence is the fact that we successfully defeated the enemy on the battlefield, but we came home with a defeat in those countries ought to be a little bit of an eye-opener. Let me just go back to this for one more moment and just share this under what Islam is and how it's being taught. The way of life known as Islam is a complete way of life. There is no separation of masjid, mosque, and state. The basis of the legal and political system is the Sharia of Allah. The duty of the Muslim citizen is to be loyal to the Islamic State. This is being taught in the United States at the junior high and in some cases elementary school level. Okay, well, what does that mean if that's all there is? If there's just a few textbooks out there, or maybe even a lot of textbooks that teach it, but there's really no movement. But in fact, we know from the largest terrorism financing and Hamas trial in American history, the United States versus Holy Land Foundation, adjudicated in Dallas in 2008, that the most prominent Islamic organizations in America are a part of the Muslim Brotherhood's movement here, in all of North America. The Islamic Society of North America, the North American Islamic Trust, the Muslim American Society, the Muslim Student Association, the Muslim Public Affairs Council, Emerge, that new one, the U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations, and on, the American Muslims for Palestine, the Muslim Students Association. Those two organizations, MSA is on over 700 campuses in America, all the major college campuses recruiting for the jihad. And we're allowing this. And yet evidence and fact has demonstrated who they are. Well, let's just break this down numerically. 700 Muslim student associations, 150 Islamic societies of fill in the blank, Greater Manchester, and they now call themselves the Islamic Society of New Hampshire. That's a Hamas Muslim Brotherhood organization right here. all subsidiaries of the Islamic Society of North America, all of them. And there are about 150 of them. We have over 2,100 Islamic centers in all 50 states, the vast majority of which are controlled by these same people. We know that from land records and who the leaders are in these organizations. You have groups out there like the Council on American Islamic Relations that the evidence in HLF and in many other terrorism trials has demonstrated is in fact the fourth Hamas organization created by the Muslim Brotherhood here in the United States. And in fact, Hamas is an inherent part of the Muslim Brotherhood, not an offshoot like Al-Qaeda. Does that make sense? So when you say, well, we're going to work, like when the president says we're going to work with the Muslim Brotherhood because they're just a political entity, well, you can make the same argument about Hamas, except that's a designated terrorist organization. Now you start to add these numbers up, and these equal large numbers. And you start to see, well, where are the leaders of the Islamic Society in North America? Well, they sit on the Homeland Security Advisory Committee. They moderate panel discussions at the CIA. They get awards from the FBI. And their subsidiaries, like the Islamic Society of Boston, create jihadis, because that's what they're meant to do. And when they create jihadis who kill Americans, the FBI in Boston turns to them for help. And the FBI director presents himself in front of Congress and said, no, actually, in this case, Congressman Gohmert, I didn't know that the Islamic Society of Boston was founded by the Al-Qaeda guy, Al-Amoudi, who we put in jail. In open testimony, how do we excuse this level of incompetence and unprofessionalism? And when people are dead because of your unprofessionalism, that is criminal negligence, and I do believe we put lawyers and doctors in jail for that. We should start doing that to some of our leaders as well. Now, just a few other things. Chattanooga. I just yesterday released a 5-minute video in Chattanooga, but you can see it at Understanding the Threat on the website. But it also, I published it yesterday. And here's what we know about that. Well, number one, the name of it is the Islamic Society of. Stop, your research is done. That's a subsidiary of ISNA. But people that don't understand that or know that, just look at the evidence. Go into who owns the Islamic Society of Greater Chattanooga, the North American Islamic Trust. During the Holy Land Foundation trial, ISNA and NATE, North American Islamic Trust, the Bank for the Muslim Brotherhood, asked the court to remove their names from the unindicted co-conspirator list, despite the fact there were hundreds of documents showing money going directly from those two accounts, the Islamic Society of North America and NATE, directly to Hamas leaders and Hamas organizations overseas. The prosecution, the Department of Justice, said ISNA and NATE in fact shared more with HLF, the Hamas organization, than just a parent organization. They were intimately connected with the HLF and its assigned task of providing financial support to Hamas. And in ruling on it, the judge said, the government has produced ample evidence to establish the associations of CARE, ISNA, and NATE with the HLF, a Hamas front, the IAP, a Hamas front, and with Hamas headquarters in Gaza. So why are we looking to these organizations for help? NATE owns the property that the Islamic Society of Greater Chattanooga resides on. It's an Islamic society. Of course you're going to get jihadis who want to kill people. That's what they teach. Finally, before I take questions, I want to say there is a solution. Right now, I'm traveling around the country in conjunction with CSP and some of their folks and speaking at the state and local level. The answer is you. Local citizens putting positive pressure on local elected officials who then get their police trained, so local police who are the tip of the spear in a counterinsurgency, and if you haven't figured out, this is an insurgency in the United States, that's how it's going to work. If it sounds too hard or too complicated for you, let me just say then we're not going to win this. But I believe Americans can be incredibly savvy when we need to be. When the future, not only our future, the future of our children and grandchildren are at stake, I think we can get this done. That's the solution. Finally, we're here with presidential candidates speaking and putting forth their views. And you all are here to get a little grasp of some of that. And I would say this, no great accomplishment or idea has ever been pushed forward with the support of the establishment. From Jesus to Galileo to John C. Humboldt, Martin Luther King, and Ronald Reagan, there's never been any great, earth-shattering, changing idea that has ever not met with resistance from the establishment. So I'm not a politician, as you might have figured, but I would say the man I want to see leading in the war that we're going to be facing and are facing right now must be courageous enough to not only speak about this, to address it very clearly and be willing to abide by his oath of office. Thank you.